Good morning and welcome to Trading with Larry. I apologize. I think we had some technical difficulty getting this thing streamed live, and I apologize. I'm joined today by Clint Brewer, and a lot to talk about for sure as the market is basically coming apart. Volatility is exploding. Volatility, if we continue down, there's a lot to talk about. We spoke before the podcast, so I'm going to throw it to you in a second because you got really a lot on China, etc. But I'm just looking at pure markets around the world, and you got the Nikkei down 2.5%. You got the DAX down 1.5%. You got us down 1.5%. And it's interesting to me because I saw a lot of I saw a lot of buying yesterday. I saw a lot of market on close buying. I've seen a ton of buying, and right now all the dippers. Remember we had to deal with these guys for 3 months. Buy the dippers. Let's see how much dippers they buy today. And volatility is exploding. I mean, where do you have vol right now? I saw it above 22 this morning. I don't know
Same
where.
here.
Now it's above 22 again. Um, with one more down wave, we could be at 30, 25. I mean, there is nobody that's going to sell this thing, okay? Because the market is overowned by retail. It's overowned in general. And I don't see. I'm going to throw it to you to go over the China stuff and just markets in general. Um, I'm looking at just so many things like oil getting hit. Um, gold's exploded. I think gold's a short, but we'll talk about that later. But I'm going to throw it to you, and you could sort of kick us off with the China news and all of that stuff overnight.
Yeah, sure. So how did we get here? Because we're seeing another decent down wave overnight here, and really, all this started last week. It was middle of the week when China came out and announced some more export controls over rare earth elements. Those have been, a really big focus here lately because of how important they are to, everything from the AI infrastructure build out to, advanced military tech. And so, but what was interesting is they came out that announcement like midweek last week, and then it was a couple of days later that Trump came out that mid morning on Friday, you know, losing his mind over it, threatening 100% tariffs, which sent the market into a tizzy. It looked like things were being, the rhetoric was being softened over the weekend. China saying, coming back on some of their announcements. Trump, or at least his administration, walking back some of the threats, and so it looked like another taco situation. You had a big rally yesterday, but now here we are again, and it's because China's came out late last night and is pushing back on its actions, or at least not pushing back on its own actions, but coming out in support of what they announced last week, saying it's lawful, that they can go through with this. It's probably more of a gesture as opposed to really impacting anything, but they hit some U.S. shipbuilders with sanctions as well. So this tit for tat thing continues, and I think what's happening now this morning is that markets are on edge because they're waiting to see what's the next Trump tweet or whatever going to be, or what's the administration going to say in response to this, because it's so unpredictable. And now this is just injecting another element of certainty. But I do, you talked about VIX. I mean, I think that those are, if you want to ignore the headlines and just watch the market action, there's two things that I would keep an eye on today. One is that VIX over 22 or 23. And I highlight that level because anytime the markets tried to pull back off the April lows, that's about as high as the VIX gets before it reverses lower. If we can see a sustained move over that 22, 23 level, I think that starts to create some selling pressure among the vol targeting crowd. They try to monitor or maintain they operate within a risk budget, let's call it that. And when risk goes up and they're out of budget, they got to sell stocks. So that'd be more selling pressure. And I'd also watch this 6550 level on the S&P 500 index, because that's the low from Friday, and that's also right around the 50-day moving average. So I think that could be a key line in the sand if you're going to see the downside accelerate here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're in an interesting opening spot. Yesterday, the S&P closed up 97 on the day on the futures, and we're already down 70. With one little whoosh or blink of the eye, we could be through that, through the weekly settlement on Tuesday. And I'm telling you, by doing this for as many years as I have, we're not getting out of October unscathed. It's just no way. It just doesn't, the market to me doesn't feel right. And what I mean by that is I just think people are hiding that. Listen, nobody will sell. Clint, I'm just telling you, no one will sell. So it's going to be interesting when we do, if we do get lower prices. Um, you know, I think that will bring in selling to the market, but I'm more concerned in a way about volatility. And why I'm concerned is I don't think that, like you said, vol targeting and all these strategies, etc. I'm not even that worried about that. I'm worried about the underexposure to hedging that many, many hedge funds have on and many, many investment managers. For the last X amount of years, barring a couple of little hiccups, they never buy puts. Like when I worked at Spear Leads, I was in charge of hedging the firm risks. That was part of my job. So they would call me up and they're like, listen, we have exposure. Now the exposures are insane. But back then, we were one of the biggest firms on Wall Street, and we sold for $8 billion to Goldman. And you got to realize, like, we had exposures in not even multiple hundreds of millions of dollars, and we were big. Now these exposures are in the billions and billions and billions. I mean, crazy billions. So, the exposures are big. You see it in the volumes that are traded on the exchange and options. And then like Eric was, I'm glad he's on a 2-day hiatus, but I mean, the stuff he was coming out with yesterday, he's like, oh, they liquidated 1 million retail traders in crypto at the same minute in altcoins. I mean, I don't know how that could even be possible. I mean, these are all speculative things, but my thought is if they're liquidating guys in Bitcoin, the move's going to be a lot more than 4,000 points or 4%. That's like chopped liver in the market for that. It's a nothing move. So I think I think there might be problems out there with exposures. The only thing helping people, which I think this trade will, I think shorting gold here at these levels using options to find risk is a very good play. Gold cannot continue like this. If it does, there's going to be Armageddon. People are going to be like, stealing gold from, people. Like I'm going to the dentist today. Maybe I should like have them take a tooth out and take my gold and sell it. So I'm not really that bullish on gold. And I'm kind of bummed out because oil traded down to 57 and change this morning, low 57s, it's 58 and change. And this is a level where, as one of my friends would say, who's one of the best oil traders in the world, back the truck up. So we're going to put, some long oil, and I suggest some long oil exposure in here. And then if you have some guts, option, maybe sell a call spread to buy a put spread in gold might not be a bad idea, or just an outright upside call spread. I wouldn't do anything naked because this stuff could get crazy. So that's sort of what I'm looking at today. Again, I would press the S&P down another 25 handles. We'll get aggressively short. Right now we're kind of just sitting, but what I would say, like even looking at, like I'm looking at Nvidia trading at 185. I think it's a short here, especially from what you're talking about with the AI, rare earth, you know, big problem type of situation. This thing might act, listen, it's the darling and everyone's long it, but it may act weak here. Um, I would stop into shorts below yesterday's settlement, which was 83.95 ish. So like another dollar down, dollar 50 down. I think then the market should trade below 80. And if you recall on Friday night, all of these markets right after the close, I don't know if you were around, but at 4 o'clock, vol spiked to $25 almost. And this stock, Nvidia, traded down to 78 and change, 178 and change. So, there's a ways to go here. But for right now, the market is holding on a thread. And hopefully we get some good trading today. But I like the gold short. I like the oil long. Bonds have been, iffy. And it's funny, we talked a little bit before about PolyMarket, which is like a betting site, but you can bet on anything. And if you pull up the odds of Trump basically putting these tariffs in on November 1st, I think it's 90% against. So it's just a regular taco. Somehow
Okay,
he's
but how much stock can you put into PolyMarket? I've
a
seen
lot, a
PolyMarket.
lot,
I've seen
a lot,
can you
Clint,
I've
a
seen look
lot.
I've seen PolyMarket all over X. Okay, people posting stuff about odds on tariffs or government shutdown, but like you talk about these guys in their underwear in a chat room pumping a stock like. How much liquidity, how much volumes behind these PolyMarket bets? Like,
Volume. I don't know. I think if you pull the site up, you could see the volume. Can you pull up PolyMarket, see the volume that traded? The election traded more on PolyMarket, the US election, than anywhere. I mean, guys were betting 10 million, 50 million. I mean, crazy numbers were flying around. Now, listen, it could be a lie. I doubt it, but I think, listen, ICE Exchange just bought PolyMarket. They must be getting volume or they would not be getting bought. So I actually think that they're very, very they're, as they call it in that game, they're the sharps. Okay, they know they're making the market. They see the money coming in, and people are playing it. So, but the point is, I don't want to really touch on PolyMarket as much as I want to touch on the fact that whether there's $1 million traded at 90%, the odds are like 90% against. I mean,
but I
80,
don't
it's now,
feel.
and wait, Clint, it's now 80% live. Okay. I mean, come on. This guy is so phony that it's 80% against him putting these in. Like, he's literally a clown, and China's sick and tired of it. I mean, wouldn't you be? I
Yeah,
mean,
which is why PolyMarket. I don't think that number is going to matter right here. I think there's going to be a big standoff from now until November 1. So he's threatening this November 1 date for 100% tariffs. And there's all the speculation around, are they going to ratchet down things, or are they going to talk? Well, guess what? Like the meeting between Trump and Xi is supposed to be like October 31st and November 1. So like they're going to take this thing down to the wire, and like the uncertainty and the headlines around this and the social media posts, like that's going to be enough to throw this market around, just like you've seen over the last, two,
but
three
I
trading
want to
sessions.
throw a timeout in. Okay. Here's the timeout. They're at 55. That is unsustainable. So it doesn't matter whether they go to 100, they're at 55 and they can't survive it and we can't survive it. And now they're tariffing our ships that are coming in with like an extra tariff. It's horrendous what's going on. So let's say he tacos out and keeps them at 55. That's a crazy number. Think about it. If your goods and services are going up by minimum 55, that takes my Starbucks meal up, to $30. It's not sustainable. We're in a really bad spot, and China's sick of it, and the thing is, coming off all of the good that Trump did, with getting the hostages released and all of this other stuff, to slowly come into this, like, now what's his next thing? He's got nothing until the end of the week. He has Zelensky in the White House begging him to surrender. Okay. I don't think that that's going to play. They may try to find a solution. But overall, up until Thursday, really the only thing that's top of mind is this nonsense. And I don't know what he's thinking. Like, come on, listen. The markets got hammered on Friday. I think a lot of it was just overvaluation, overowned stuff. Because think about it, he's changed tariffs 20 times in the last 3.5 months on everybody. Okay. Now all of a sudden that headline sends us rocking down 2.5%. I just think we were overowned. And then think about it. It almost sets up perfectly. Yesterday is some BS relief rally. We're sitting around, all of us, going, why are we up half the move from Friday? Nothing happened because he said she's a good guy, a nice guy. I mean, what the Truth Social post is ridiculous. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, what does he think? He can rip on China left and right and go, oh, he's a great guy. He's a good guy. He's nice. I mean, come on. It's
Yeah.
and then the market takes that and runs with it. But like right now, as we're on the air and we got started late, so we'll go another 15-ish. Get everybody caught up on the markets, trades, that I'm liking. I'm liking long crude and short gold here for trade. But overall, the market's sitting down 65. Another 35 puts us through the weekly low. I would be shocked if we did not get that. I would be surprised. Anything can happen,
Yeah.
you know. But I would be surprised with what I'm seeing with volatility in other markets around the world that we won't get it. I mean, I'm looking DAX is, down almost 400 points. And that's
I would actually, I think if you want to hint that that level would give way on the S&P, I would keep an eye on crypto right here. I would watch Bitcoin and I would watch Ethereum. So I have Ethereum pulled up right now, and Ethereum is testing the closing low from last Friday and the opening low from yesterday. So it's right around this 3,800, 3,900 level.
Oh,
And
I
by the
thought
way,
it
that
got didn't get on that whoosh down to like 3,500
it
maybe.
did, yeah. It did on that on the intraday, yeah, down to 3,500.
Yeah.
But this 3,800 level, this has been an open or closing level, going back to the end of September on at least 4 or 5 different sessions. So I would watch that level, and then it's kind of there was that big intraday drop on Ethereum. Bitcoin didn't see as much of that, so Bitcoin's a little bit cleaner when you're just trying to define that level. But on Bitcoin, I would watch. It's right around 108 or 109,000. Yeah. So I mean, this is the low end of a range that this thing has been in really since July. And we're right back to it. The S&P is going to be holding above its weekly low for now. It looks like at the open, but Bitcoin and Ethereum are both right there. And I think that's an area to keep an eye on. I mean, yeah, there's all this news of forced liquidations over the weekend, whatever. I mean, the amount of,
No, it's
you
like
know,
Friday afternoon, and it was very funny because I don't know, Eric. He was like, a million traders got liquidated at the same time. I'm like, dude, if that happened in Bitcoin, this thing would drop 20,000, not 4,000. So I don't think the liquidation was that big. But I will tell you, if you look at Bitcoin, no one has ever sold a Bitcoin in their life. Like I would say, most people that own, I would say that in the investable world, no one owned a Bitcoin 3 years ago, even 2 years ago, I would say. Maybe 3 years ago. When did we start with the first ETF, Beto? That was a couple of years ago. That was
yeah,
the first way for people to get involved here on more of an institutional level. So there hasn't been a sale in Bitcoin by an institutional person or an investor in 2 years. Okay. And again, they're all up money because maybe these things were listed with Bitcoin at 70 or 80,000. Okay. But nobody, and I can promise you, has lived through a Bitcoin nuclear winter. I know you have. I mean, it is so much worse than any bear market that I've ever traded in S&P. And if you ask if you ask 90% of people that own Bitcoin what it does, what it is, 90% don't have a freaking clue. Anything about it. Nothing. They've been told by their advisor they have to have money in Bitcoin. And it's the same thing in gold now. Think about gold. Like gold wasn't even investable 3, 4 years ago. That wouldn't even be in your asset mix. Now they want you to have 10 to 20% in gold. So I'm just saying they're shifting all of these weightings, and I think, to be honest with you, we could have some trouble in some of these asset classes because it just it's too much. And if you look at crude oil broke. Listen to this one. I started in the business in 1984. Crude oil broke $50, I think, in the 80s, in 1986. I mean, it's trading at the same price that it was in 1986, pretty much. I mean, have you ever seen anything like that? I mean, and it's a natural resource, right? So there's a lot of divergences here. I think the market is overowned. Again, since we've been on the podcast, markets haven't moved a lot. They're hoping they don't meet any selling today. Because if they meet selling today off the opening and later, I don't see where. I mean, maybe you have levels. I don't see the level. I mean, the first level would be like unchanged on the week, which is like 30 lower, which is nothing. But I don't know where the levels are below that. I don't know if you have
I
anything.
mean, look, the S&P has spent, what is it, 110 consecutive days above the 50-day moving average, which is, start not a record but approaching records. I mean, that's where, the 50-day lines up at that weekly low, which is right around the 65.50 level. I mean, I think that's the most crucial one. And if I'm looking back from there, I mean, there's some chop around the 64.30, 6400 area that would, I think if we broke 65.50, I think that 6400 area would be an easy target to hit next.
Yeah. Again, I know they're coming to buy them on the opening. Just keep an eye out, see what the action looks like. I would look for a whoosh. Volatility to me seems really the outlier, doesn't it to you? Like, why is it up so much on a 50 spoo handle down day? I mean, I know we haven't had a lot of them, but like, why is it up so much? Why is VIX up, over 10% on a less than 1% move on the S&P? I mean, that to me is the clear signal that something is going on here. And either people are under hedged, overexposed, and something doesn't feel right. And, to be a buyer of the market, I'd like to see like a whoosh out and then maybe a down open, something out of the ordinary that we haven't seen in a while. But I'm looking at VIX is up 14, 15% on the day. I mean, I know it moves a lot different than the market, but that they want to own it. Do you agree? I mean, just looking at it, they want to own it. It hasn't. When was the last time they traded above 22, where you could trade it, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we've had little spike ups, but this seems to me like it wants to go higher.
Yeah, that would be my main concern. I mean, we've not had a sustained move above 22, 23 on VIX since the April lows. Um, that's where you got to go back to if you want to see that type of move. And so that's where, again, I think above that really starts to draw out the fund flows from the vol targeting crowd. And that's where you got to really pay attention to that 65.50 on the S&P. And again, I think, and here's one question for you, Larry. I don't know how much you were following the crypto action over the weekend. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't a huge move, except maybe in some of these altcoins. But I mean, I think the the panic on social media over the weekend with some of these crypto moves speaks to how much leverage there is in the space. I think people are just massively levered in the crypto space. And I'm wondering, we talked about in FINRA margin debt hitting record levels. Like how much margin, how much leverage is floating around the stock market? To what point? You say people don't want to sell, but at what point would they be forced to sell?
Oh, they were forced to sell. So, I mean, Eric was talking a little bit about it and he was like chirping. I mean, I don't even know what was going on with that guy, but literally he's telling me people trade with $1,000. They're 20 to 1 leveraged, like I don't even, maybe this is how the currencies used to be back in the day where these firms would extend massive margins. So I believe there's a lot of that in the space. I think more in altcoins, which are illiquid. And how do you get out of that? Like I know some of the altcoins drop 70% in like 10 minutes, So that's not a market you want to be in. But listen, it's the same thing with these AI stocks and these other, whatever, Spartle, AI, compute, whatever these stocks are that have tripled. And people want to get rich in 1 minute. They don't treat it like a business. They're sitting in chat rooms trying to manipulate stocks. I can name names of people that do that, who have newsletters that are pumping and dumping stocks. They don't trade anything more than $100 million stock. Ross Cameron is one to speak of. I forgot the name of his firm, but they get in a chat room, they pump and dump stocks. They pick stocks up the most on the day, under 200 million, not billion, 200 million in market cap, and they jam up stocks. So people are looking to get rich in 1 minute in one trade, and they don't treat this like a business or career. Like, listen, I don't even understand the chat room. I mean, I do. People are in there hoping that they could be the guy putting out the stock that people listen to. Because think about how valuable is that, Clint? You got thousands of people in a chat room. You put in a stock you like that you already bought, and then all of a sudden you got a bunch of knuckleheads coming behind it, and it's like musical chairs. You just don't want to be the last guy holding the bag, and you got a lot of that. You got a lot of leverage. You got a lot of people that are not professional traders that have been sitting in here for years and years and years. And the question is, and it's funny, I'm looking at you and I'm thinking this to myself, how many guys or people that are trading or investing the way they are now are going to be doing this 3 to 5 years from today? And I would say if we went in a bear market, the answer would be less than 10%. They'll be on to the next. They'll be selling, whatever, third mortgages or whatever. It's an unbelievable thing. It's almost like a raid. And then, it's funny, there's just been so many elements of this for so long, but, I don't want to get caught too much in the weeds. I like oil at these levels. One of my close friends is one of the biggest oil traders in the world. Again, he could be wrong, couple of dollars, who knows? But he's saying like this 57, 58 area is a really good area, long term to be long oil. Maybe you buy some integrated, oil stocks, or USO. Gold has had a really, really big run. Again, it could go higher. If it goes higher, I mean, to me, this is signifying a massive issue in the world, not even in the market, in the world, that they're running into gold. Like, gold doesn't pay interest. It, it's literally has to like sit in your drawer or under your bed or in a safety deposit box, unless you buy an ETF or something like that. So I'm not understanding that. And then, we haven't touched on this. The government has been shut down, and it's going to be 5 weeks. Okay. I mean, the Fed meeting is in what, 2 weeks? I think it's 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Yeah.
What if the government's shut? I mean, come on. They're going to have no security. They're going to go into the Fed meeting. There's going to be no police outside the Fed. Like, what are they going to have to hire? Private security? I don't understand like how they're going to go in that meeting and go, you know what? I feel really comfortable about cutting rates here. We haven't seen a number in 5.5 weeks. We're data dependent, but we're cutting rates just because, which is what the market is saying. But I don't get it. But it's October. October. It's funny. Everyone's like seasonality, September. Listen, I've been saying it on this podcast for months. October is always the worst as far as I don't know on a percentage basis, maybe it's not down as much as September, but the craziest trade that I've ever seen has always been in October.
But
Oh,
we wrote about this in your e-letter recently. Volatility in October is 33% higher than the average of all the other months when you look back.
yeah, and you get and listen, you've had the mini crash, the crash. You've had massive down moves during this month. I think a lot of it is, you know, June, July, August. I don't know why people go on vacation, but they're out. Then they come back September feeling pretty good, and then by October, market gets a little, skittish. And it's funny because the S&P for the year, okay, is up like coming into today will be up 11, 12%. Okay, what if they wipe half of that out in the next couple of weeks or the next week? Now you're only up 4 or 5. You're a little nervous, right? You're not thinking things are that good. So there's a lot of stuff at jeopardy here. Today is an interesting one. Vol to me is gone up outsized versus the move that we've had in the market per se. So I would keep an eye on that. We're getting a little bit close to the opening. So, I'll throw it to you if there's anything, that you're looking at or you want to talk about.
Yeah, top three for me today, and probably for the remainder of the week. One is watch that 6550 area on the S&P. That's the weekly low. That's right around the 50-day moving average. Watch for a sustained move on VIX above 22 or 23. If you see that, I think it makes it more likely we break that weekly level on the S&P. And the third thing is, if you want a hint of where the action could be going, keep an eye on those crypto levels we were just talking about with Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think it's around 109,000 on Bitcoin. If you start to see that range, that's the low end of a 3-month range. If you see that start to give way, that could be a hint at what's ahead for the equities.
Yeah, I think that's all good stuff to look at. It's funny. I'm looking at the under weighted hedging that these hedge funds have on and these institutions. And I was talking a little bit with you about Paul Tudor Jones, who I think is the greatest pure trader in history. No angle, no Jane Street rig, just a seat of the pants, great technician, etc. I would, and listen, we're all getting older. I have a lot of gray hair and, I've been doing it a really long time, but I was shocked when he was on CNBC last week and he's like, we're in a complete bubble. But, he was like scared to short the market. I'm sure he's short now, but like the guy's like, we're in the biggest bubble of all time. This, that, and the other thing. And, it's, it's interesting to me that he didn't come on and be like, this is the biggest bubble I've ever seen, bigger than he did say it. He said it's a bigger bubble than 2000, but he wasn't freaking out the way I think he needed to be. And again, he's massively bearish, but he thought maybe the market would go up first. But I don't really see that. But also, a good friend of mine is an analyst, and it's funny. He has to be bullish. The firms want him bullish, but he's not bullish. He texted me on Friday. He's got like downside puts. I'm like, what? So the landscape is set up. It's going to be today. I think is an interesting day because I think if we do break that low, I think you're going to see VIX spike above 25. I think people are under hedged. And I think that nobody is long VIX. Think about this. They've been smashing front month VIX for 4 months straight. And all you need is a down day today, followed by a down day tomorrow, and we'll be above 30. That's my call. So just keep an eye on, like you said, crypto. I think it's important. Not the craziest, most important because Clint, it's such an illiquid market. If they get 10 sellers in there, they could knock that thing down, whatever. But I think really the level in crypto, Bitcoin, and I think it could hit it, is 100K, under 100K. And if it goes under 100K, it's still up on the year, decently. And then my last thing question or sort of thought. Does Trump really like Bitcoin? Think about it. He doesn't. He likes it because he got his kids rich, and he went to the crypto conference and they loved him. And he's like, "Oh, crypto. Let me say I like it." I don't even think. I mean, how could he like it? Like, it goes against anything that any president would stand for. But he can't regulate Argentina or Colombia or Russia. Why does he want them to have a source to funnel funds without anyone knowing? It just doesn't seem to make a heap of sense. But, that's what I see. And I think we've covered pretty much everything. I don't know if you want to close on anything, but, I think today could be an interesting day. They're going to try to buy out of the gate most likely, and we'll see if we hold.
Yeah, I mean, markets are going to be on edge, waiting for the response to the China news overnight. What's the Trump administration going to say? But don't watch CNBC. Just watch the 65.50 level on S&P 500 cash. That's all that matters.
Okay, we're on it. Everybody have a great day. Getting close to the opening. Enjoy. Watch the VIX. Watch those S&P levels, and we'll see if we're going to hold today. It may not hold, and tomorrow could be a very interesting podcast. Enjoy.